Hi, welcome to Lemonade. Welcome back to Lemonade, or welcome if you're new.
Welcome back. The previous week we started talking about boundaries, and this is going to be a continuation episode.
So, if you haven't seen it, to get a general understanding about boundaries and what we were talking about, go check it out. Just to give you a short
Summary. We talked about what boundaries was, and we talked about the three types of boundaries, which is rigid, healthy, and the other one I can't.
chorus. So it means basically you have very loose boundaries, basically no boundaries.
Yeah.
The rigid one, it's in its name, it's
Very rigid,
very rigid. And the healthy is like the between the two.
which is what we all should strive for and have.
Okay, and we also talked about the different kinds of boundaries, which are physical, emotional, intellectual, time, and more. There's actually a lot. These are just the basics.
We advise you guys to do your own research and learn more about it because it can be helpful.
I don't think you could have enough information about boundaries because there are so many.
Exactly. So the more you learn about it, the more you can apply it into your life, and everyone can have healthy boundaries.
Let's go to today's topic.
So we talked about the types of boundaries, and here we want to tell you about how you can apply healthy boundaries into your life and what kind of people need healthy boundaries and how to identify it in yourself. Signs that you need boundaries. Well, first is that you do not have time for yourself because you've been spending a lot of time. It could be on other people or getting distracted by doing things that don't matter in your life, which means you give all your time for others because you're such a people pleaser. And
So that sounds like an attack.
okay. The second one is when you have resentment toward others because you can't stand up for yourself and talk about what you deserve in that relationship with the other person.
What is resentment?
Resentment is when you resentment is a feeling someone has when you Google. Let's Google.
So resentment is basically uh, feeling hating people. Is it? So resentment is bitterness and anger that someone feels about something. So in this case, when we say feeling resentment, it is feeling anger and bitterness towards others for something that we let happen. So exactly, if you have resentment, a lot of resentment towards others, that means you need boundaries.
So everyone needs healthy boundaries, and that's number one because you deserve to have healthy relationship with others and with yourself as well because your time and energy matter.
Which is very important. Like if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, I don't think there's any way you can have good relationships with others.
Exactly. So if you're treating yourself badly in front of others and if you talk negatively about yourself, of course, the other person is going to second that and treat you the same way you treat yourself. So
I have actually had a lot of experience with that. So I had a lot of negative talk, negative self-talk. And people started taking onto that and then adding on it.
Sometimes you might say it in a joking form, which is my experience. Self-depreciating jokes you make can be taken the wrong way by others who, listen to that and want to treat you the same way.
Yeah, so like you're like setting your values. So if you lower your values, people also value you at the same level.
Yes.
So like if you have seen people who like think very highly of themselves and who carry themselves in like a very what do you call it? Like take themselves as very important, other people also take them as very important.
Because that's the value that they set. So now let's talk about how we can start to implement boundaries into our life.
Okay, so when talking about setting boundaries, the first thing that we need to do is identify our old boundaries. So if we're people with very poor boundaries, so if you're like me, for example, if you were a people pleaser, which is the poorest boundary, so basically it means you have no boundaries. So you have to identify what those boundaries are. And yeah, it's like what type of boundaries did you have? And then after identifying your old boundaries or your lack of boundaries, then you have to identify the healthy boundaries you want to have now. So to do this, you have to identify your values. Like if you had none, for example, you have to establish your values. So this could be identifying what makes you feel good and what makes you feel bad, right? So what you like and what you don't like, and to identify the things that you are resentful of, or the people you are resentful of, the people that you are resentful of, and you know, look inside.
Definitely. Look into yourself first of all, and then you can go to the next step, which is communicating your boundaries. People cannot read your mind. Therefore, you have to tell them what kind of relationship you expect to have with them. And the only way you can do that is by telling them
You have to
clearly. And then afterwards, you have to communicate it again. Because if people already know you as a people pleaser, they're going to assume that the boundaries you set, you're just going to cave in eventually and get rid of it. So if you communicate it more than once, they might get the idea and start treating you the way you want to be treated in that relationship. And yeah, like you have to stay firm on it. But an exception is if afterwards you tell them over and over again and they're not going to respect it, then you have to take some measures.
Yeah, so this would be setting consequences. So one thing, like if you search anywhere, like boundaries, like go to TikTok, go to YouTube, and if you search about boundaries, so boundaries are not meant to change other people's behaviors or to tell people what to do. It's to protect you and to, what's it called? To say what you will do if something that you don't like is happening. It's the action is yours, not the other people. It's not telling people don't do this. It's telling people if you do this, I will do this. So for example, let's see. Tell me one boundary you have.
A boundary I have could be, I don't know.
Okay, for example, it's lending money or lending money. So you lend someone money and you want they don't want to give it back, or they take very long to give it back. And then they ask for money again, right? So you say, if you don't give me my money on time, I will not lend you money again, right? So the next time they ask, you'll say, no, I'm not going to lend you money because, you're not doing this. So the consequence is the action that you will take.
And besides that, you can also take other measures, which can be as extreme as cutting that person out of your life. But do that depending, that's up to you. Like the other extreme measures are up to you and you decide.
Yeah, why this could be very hard is the boundaries that we're setting is basically for all the relationships we have in our lives, right? So it could be very hard to just cut people off, but it's an extreme measure, like, because some people can be very abusive towards us. Like there are so many type of peoples. There are narcissists out there, so it's depending on the relationship and depending on the situations, how you take the measures.
Yeah.
Here.
You know best the situation you are in. So according to that, make the decision you need to do wisely. When you're trying to set a boundary, it could be hard the first time if you're not used to speaking up for yourself. So you should get into it like slowly. You can start by, for example, if someone is calling your name the wrong way, for example, Arsima is your name. If I'm calling you
Armisa.
Armisa, you can be like, you can correct me like right away.
Yeah, or it can start just as simple as saying no to things you don't want to do or going to places you don't want to go. Just say no, I don't want to go.
Yeah. So the thing that prevents us from building boundaries or having boundaries with others is guilt. Guilt can prevent us from setting boundaries because we feel bad in the moment, but we should prefer feeling bad in the moment rather than having a lifetime of relationship with that person or with yourself, being frustrated with yourself for a lifetime. It's better to have that momentary disappointment.
Because if you're a person without, if you have been a person without boundaries before, you have gotten to the idea of, or you feel like everybody deserves to have everything from you. So when you say no, or when you start setting boundaries, you feel like you have taken something away from that person. Like you feel like you're actually hurting them. So that's what guilt is. So it's a normal thing to have when you start setting boundaries.
Yeah. And it might not get away. You might always feel guilty. But it's better to feel guilty than not have healthy boundaries at the end of the day. And there's no such thing as a guilt-free boundary. So you have to,
It's okay
try
to
to
feel
get
guilty.
used to it.
It's okay.
And the other thing is we sometimes have this fear, the case scenario. Worst case scenario thinking is based on fear. And we might fear that the other person might lash out on us or backbite us. But that is based on fear and we cannot predict the future. Therefore, we have to do it anyway.
When you say that, I just realized something. So what we talked about now applies if it's like not in a very extreme situation. Like if you're dealing with someone who's very toxic, like someone who's violent, someone who's very abusive, like a narcissist. It's very hard to set boundaries, and it's like it's very hard. This is like if you're like in a normal situation. So if you're in any type of very extreme situation, like this could be a basics, but
You guys should do your own research,
and get help.
get help.
Get like
Try to implement the kind of boundaries that would be beneficial in your personal. If you feel like your boundaries have been violated, here are a couple of questions you should ask yourself. The first one is, have I communicated my boundaries clearly with the other person? Have I told them what I expect in this relationship? The second could be, what have I contributed to the situation? You probably played a role in it, or maybe not, but it's good to ask yourself to identify where the problem is.
to know if there's anything you could do to fix it.
Yeah, the third is, how can I make the situation healthier, which is what Arsima said. Like, if you can make the situation better.
Yeah, like by asking yourself those two questions, you can see how you can make the relationship healthier, or either if you can make it healthier at all. That's all. Moving on. So when talking about setting boundaries, it's not just setting boundaries with other people around us or with other relationships. It also includes the relationship we have with ourselves. So this could be like keeping promises to ourselves. So for example, if I said I was gonna wake up at 6 in the morning, exercise, and eat healthy, I'm supposed to keep that promise. Because if someone says they were gonna do something for me, and if they didn't do it, I would have to establish a boundary there, right? So if I if we decide to meet today and you just didn't show up, I'd have to set a boundary, right?
Yeah.
Like if you do this, maybe I'm not gonna meet with you anymore. So this should also apply to yourselves. So it's hard. You can't say like you can't break up with yourself or anything. It's a bit harder to keep a promise to yourself because you're accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it could also be something like taking a break when you're like working very hard. It's like you need to have a boundary with your work and with your self-care. And you should also have, maybe if your job is on your computer, you need to have a digital boundary, like turning notifications off, setting work hours, and sticking to it and so on.
So the benefits of having healthy boundaries is, of course, the first one, you can get rid of toxic people that are in your life. And the second is that you can nurture good relationships and have more good people around you that want to be around you because of you and not because something they can get out of you.
Yeah. So basically, having boundaries makes us better people and makes us better friends to other people and to ourselves.
Exactly. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll have another episode next week, so please
Stay tuned.
stay tuned.
If you felt like you've learned something, like and subscribe.
And share this video to people you might think might need it.